Hello and welcome one and all to another terrible mini documentary in relation to my playthrough of Company of Heroes, where I take command of the Kampfgruppe Leia Division in their struggle during Operation Market Garden, one of my World War II interests and an operation I found incredibly interesting throughout, especially when I discovered the film A Bridge Too Far. Anyhow, I hope you enjoy and this piques your interest in learning more. In September of 1944, the Allies launched an audacious offensive into the lands of Upper Netherlands, an attempt to capture a string of bridges and aided by the advance of 30 Corps, an attempt to circumvent the Siegfried Line, bringing the war on the Western Front to a swifter close. Some said by Christmas. Well, we've heard that one before. In this struggle, that was planned to take but a few days, however, German resistance was far stiffer than anticipated, and the whole operation dragged on beyond expectations and left a sour taste as the operation was not a total success. Also, the film A Bridge Too Far is set on this operation, a film favourite of mine, and I highly recommend if you're into your war films. In this video, we will take a brief and broad stroked look at Operation Market Garden. June 6, 1944, Operation Overlord landed the Allied armies on the beaches of Normandy. After a few months of attritional warfare and attempts for a breakthrough and some friendly fire, looking at you Operation Cobra, the Allied forces broke through the German lines. This led to the tragedy for the German army, known as the Falaise Pocket. The Wehrmacht from then fell into a rapid retreat, though not making it easy for the chasing Allied armies, as the Western Front moves dangerously close to the German border and the dreaded Siegfried Line. The Allies start to plan for the push up and the penetration of the series of defences. And here steps in Field Marshal Montgomery, affectionately known as Monty. He and his staff drew up plans for a joint Allied airborne and ground push into occupied Holland. The seeds are sown for the birth of Operation Market Garden. The planned operation would involve 3 airborne divisions, the US 82nd and 101st Airborne and the British 1st Airborne Division, and then British 30 Corps. Included in the British Airborne Division was the Polish 1st Independent Parachute Brigade. The 101st Airborne Division would be tasked in taking control of Eindhoven and the surrounding area and any bridges over the various canals. The 82nd Airborne Division would be tasked in taking control of the bridges around Grave and the Waal Bridge at Nijmegen. The British and Polish airborne detachments would be tasked with wresting control of the Arnhem Bridge and the bridges at Oostbeek, and 30th Corps would be tasked in making a charge through the German line and advance towards each Allied drop zone and the zones of airborne controlled territory, crossing over each captured bridge and eventually circumventing the Siegfried Line and into northern Germany. A quick side note, Operation Market Garden was really 2 simultaneous and mutual operations. Operation Market was the airborne forces and Operation Garden was the ground force side of things. The operation was planned to only have taken 2 days. At least that was what Monty told his subordinate, Browning. Of course, in very recent history, we've heard that one before. The German forces were battered but not beaten, even after the fighting in France and the retreat after the Battle of the Falaise Pocket. Field Marshal von Rundstedt was in overall command of the Western Front. However, in immediate command of the German forces in Holland was none other than the Führer's fireman, Field Marshal Walter Model, and his fantastic monocle. A notable German force in the area around Oostbeek and Arnhem was the 2nd SS Panzer Corps, made up of the 9th and the 10th SS Panzer Divisions, along with their typical SS fanatical reputation. The rest of the German forces were remnants of the various divisions from the battles across France, hastily reinforced with personnel from the Marines, the Luftwaffe, and anywhere men could be scraped up from. Also new recruits made up of the young and the old, and not to forget the Fallschirmjäger detachments. Some of the British intelligence and reports from Dutch resistance gave reports of a sizable presence of German forces, though these were practically ignored. This would lead to disastrous results. especially since the British airborne operations were to be hampered by a staggered 3-day drop, right into the path of the 9th SS Panzer Division. On the 17th of September 1944, Operation Market Garden commences. Unlike on D-Day, the airborne forces, when deployed, were not scattered, and this allows some early access on day 1. The US divisions achieved most of their objectives, with only the Zon Bridge being destroyed and the failure to capture the Nijmegen Bridge. However, since the British power drops were staggered over the course of 3 days, only 3 battalions were available to travel from their drop zone near Oosterbeek to rapidly advance to the Arnhem Bridge via jeep. They met stiff resistance, and Lieutenant Colonel John Frost was only able to capture one end of the Arnhem Bridge. There were attempts to capture the other side, though due to effective German resistance, they were unable to take full control of the bridge. Also, there will be further disaster. The plans for Operation Market Garden will be found by German troops, as some of the British forces took the plans with them, and thus allow the Germans to know the exact timetables and troop movements for the upcoming days. This gave the German forces a huge advantage, and they will wreak havoc on the Allies, mainly 30 Corps and the British forces at Arnhem. Over the next few days, the German forces will launch constant counterattacks and artillery bombardments upon British forces in Arnhem, and the Germans will occupy the drop zones the British forces need for their next waves of reinforcements and supplies, of which the incoming waves will severely be mauled, and the supplies will fall into German possessions. 30th Corps' advance will be hampered and frustrated by German efforts and the destruction of the Zon Bridge. Plus, the infamous Highway 69 is mostly narrow and flanked by ditches on both sides, making advance painfully slow after various German ambushes and wrecked Allied vehicles blocking their way, giving the name Hell's Highway. 30th Corps will never reach the British airborne troops trapped at Arnhem in time, as they will surrender in a few days' time, and the remnants of the British airborne near Oosterbeek will make an audacious river crossing to escape the German onslaught. In all, Operation Market Garden has gone down in history as a failure. Some argue the war in the West was prolonged rather than shortened. Despite this victory for the German forces, the writing was still on the wall for the Third Reich, as the Soviet armies were rapidly advancing from the east, and after the Allies have supplied their respective armies, the Western Front will then be on the move towards the Siegfried Line. The Germans will make one last major offensive in the West in 3 months' time, which will end in failure. But that will be a mini documentary for another day, when I play Cup of Heroes 2. Until then, thank you so much for watching this terrible production, and I hope to see you next time.